Hey guys, so today I want to talk about holding space and deep listening. So I just finished the sweat lodge yesterday. And for those of you who are not familiar with a sweat lodge, what it is you get in a kind of a yurt, but like a little hut that's been sealed. Well, it was like a wooden frame of sticks and it was sealed with blankets and curtains and covers and whatever could like seal it in. On the inside, it's just on the dirt. It's mud. There's a pit in the middle. You heat up some stones on a fire. You drop them in that hole in the middle. And then with a bunch of people and a ceremony leader, you go in there. It's pitch black, except for the embers from the stones. You sit with yourself. And the ceremony leader throws water on the stones with some pine branches and creates a kind of a sauna in there, kind of a steam bath in there. And it just kind of builds up. And we were in there for like 3 hours. And you go through all kinds of anxiety. Well, in the beginning, you start wondering, like, oh, shit, I can't see heads or tails. It's not any different with my eyes open or with my eyes closed. And I just know it's going to start steaming up in here and it's going to get hot. But at least I'm in here with a bunch of other people who are doing the exact same thing. So it's this kind of crazy ritual. So your first thoughts are, how long is this going to last? How long is the round going to be? And you start going through all these anxieties. And if you sit with them, if you hold space for yourself deeply, you get accustomed to it. And you're not in there on your own. So that's something you can also rely on. And I think this is an analogy for life, guys. That's why it's such a powerful ceremony. Such a good way to detox and also let go of things that don't serve you. So, coming back to holding space. So that I mentioned this because this is a workshop where I really had to hold space for myself. And I had to just symbolically feel like the space was being held for me inside there. In case at any point that it did get too intense for me, that if I did need help, that I would be guided, ushered out, and that we could all depend on each other. And I think, that's just a lesson we should all have. Anyway, this is what's inspired my talk for today, but I wanted to get into deep listening as well. So I'm going to say my relationship with deep listening started when I started co-hosting these workshops with a dear and great friend of mine, Annalisa Donatella, who's an amazing human being. She's a singer, a singing coach, philosopher of the voice, now religious studies teacher, women's circle holder, conscious lap dance teacher, just super interesting. Another space cadet, just exploring the spaces of consciousness, exploring deeply, doing her part. And we started doing these conscious listening workshops, something that apparently she'd done in Amsterdam. And maybe twice she'd invited me to come meet her in a park and do this. And so what would happen, the rules were you divvy up the time, half an hour each, or 35 minutes, let's say. 20 minutes talking when it's your turn. There's an A and a B. So A has 20 minutes talking. 10 minutes, the other person can ask questions, and then 5 minutes of silence, and then you swap. And in the listening part, she taught me that it's best to just be poker faced. Be poker faced and listening the whole time, because that other person really needs a moment where they know what it's like to be heard. And if you even give visual cues back, you're suggesting something to what they're saying. And sometimes people depend on those visual cues, actually like a or like wow, or like a yeah, to actually stop them from being more brave and stop them from talking, like to actually take their turn away. And guys, pay attention. I bet you have a friend like this. Or maybe you're that person and you don't know it. You don't notice it. They don't notice it. But or that's the only thing that allows that person to talk. Some people who they don't get that verbal confirmation eventually, even though it's a friend that they know should has no problem listening to them for ages. They start to depend on that. They don't feel heard unless they get a little pat on the back. And these aren't, super important, largely extending things, but this conscious listening exercise was just a way for me to feel how all those things work in us. And with the poker face and then the 10 minutes of asking questions. And she also suggested, don't just ask questions about what bothers you. Ask questions to find out more about what bothers you. Don't ask questions to kind of suggest answers. Ask questions for the parts that actually made you need more information to be satisfied. Or just things that you were curious about. So that person is deeply being heard. And again, given the impression of deeply being heard. Because I don't know about you, but in conversation, for me, I love when a person starts to ask questions for the fillers. Because I know that person is really listening. And they're like spinning the wheels. But so this was my first truly deep experience of holding space and truly deeply listening. And we'd partner up and walk around the park, and the listener would kind of guide the walking, and they were encouraged to follow their urges. So if they wanted to stop and look at a bunch of flowers, stop and look at a bunch of flowers. And what you realize is the body starts to enter into like a sort of communication, where just by implying a certain space of focus in your physical surroundings, the listener could offer some kind of reprieve, release, remedy to the speaker and, whatever they were offloading. Next place I probably started learning about deeply holding space was ecstatic dances, which was these sober dance events, raves. Sober dance raves, 2-hour events. You go there. Sometimes they have a little bit of an initiation of like kind of ice breaking in the beginning, but the whole thing is once the music starts, once the event starts, it's a DJ'd event. DJ plays a set, tries to feed the crowd as much as possible. They dance, but the rules are there's no talking and you have to dance. So it's like getting to know people through movement, getting to know yourself when you can't talk. And I started to realize that if I just focused on myself and what I wanted to feel and move through it and move with it and match it to the music, that when I would start to go deep into like a movement meditation in these practices, in these events, I took them as practices. I would battle my ego. Oh, how much of my dancing is me wanting to impress other people right now? How long does it take me to actually get to myself? How long before I'm not really feeling like I'm choosing how I'm moving. I'm just kind of moving now because we've all been doing this for an hour and the energy's building up so much and the music is like the DJ's killing it. We just kind of are taken away by our own intuition, our own impulses. And then realizing that this actually draws you to people. I would just kind of accidentally fall into dances with people that I wasn't even looking to fall into dances with, or maybe that I spotted earlier on and didn't think like, that guy looks cool or she's pretty, and then not looking for it, fall into a subconscious conversation that leads me into a dance with this person, almost like with my eyes closed, and so yeah, This another anecdote, I guess, to introduce this, I'm going to mention is in my acting training we used to do in our improv for acting class, which was not so much based on becoming a hilarious improv actor or like improv sketch work. It was just, I don't know, it was like mental exercises for the actor. I used to call it our therapy. I used to tell the teachers like, oh, we're back for therapy, because it was all just like kind of subconscious storytelling and just weird games that got you out of your head and got you more into your imagination. And at least the warm-ups were. And there was this one game that it just, the way it was framed, the way it was phrased blew my mind. It was called Give and Take. And so the teacher would send up 5 to 6 people into the space. And the whole thing was one person would be moving and making noise at a time. The other 4, let's say if it's 5 of them up there, the other 4 would just be frozen until one of them wanted to take the story onto themselves. And you could do exchanges, but even in the exchanges, only one person's moving at a time, and just kind of see what came out of that. But it's the way the teacher phrased the aspects of the game. He said that the person, and when he'd be giving suggestions, take more, give more. But the person who was taking was the person who was moving. That's how the phrasing worked. So everyone else who's frozen is giving. The person who's moving is taking. And just that kind of reversal of values and seeing it visually and being in it viscerally, just kind of, it blew my mind. So I've always been someone who has found it really easy to talk a lot. Hence the YouTube. I need to keep friends, guys. So I'm finding a vent for all my intense conversations to people who will search it on the internet and have an actual reason for wanting to hear this stuff, or be curious about it and shut it off after 5 seconds of realizing they hate it. Whatever. But yeah. So I've been, practicing meditation for about, I don't know how long enough that I'm addicted to it. Guys, also, I'm not trying to brag. Look at my YouTube channel. You see how I accidentally got good at meditating. Before you judge me, it was for mental health reasons, and it was free. So I clung on to it like a life raft in a violent ocean. Yes, I know it's a sob story. Why is he hitting us over the head with a sob story? So we have to, not judge him for being better at meditating than us. Anyway, let's not get into that, but I feel a bit of a dedicated Space Cadet moment coming out. So one thing you start doing when you start doing all these exercises of presence, which, if you heard me right, I accidentally fell into with my acting training, and accidentally fell into with my depression with meditation. One thing I started to try and do was go into situations, and instead of trying to solve them with my head, see what happened with a certain friend or something, moments that were uncomfortable, if I just kind of stayed really present and just listened. And a lot of it came with friends who I knew complained a lot, or we were going to talk about intense stuff and kind of support each other, and sometimes it just got too much and I didn't like that aspect of the relationship. And I would go in, and instead I started to feel myself talking over moments to just provide answers so we could cut the conversation short. I started thinking, what if I didn't stress myself to need to have an answer? What if I just held space? What if I went into a crowd and just held space? Just kind of stood there and observed, mostly. And what I started to notice is people would appreciate it. People would appreciate it because I was this guy with acting training skills and a lot of pursuits in my life that made it easy for me to be an extrovert, whereas other people haven't practiced that. And what you notice when you just hold space is you give other people the room to come alive, especially if they're used to you taking up that space. All of a sudden, you see them go through the movements of like seeing their patterns of kind of like, because people who can tolerate how extrovert I am, a lot of times I've realized it's a favor to me. It's like, he likes to talk or whatever, I'll give him the space, It's a reason for that person to stay quiet or hide behind a role of giving in their silence, And I've learned that it's important to give back in that way. So I've tried to show up and just kind of be present rather than be this know-it-all in situations. And, that's when you really start to learn about the space that you do take up. I see some friends kind of like not be sure what to do. And then the more I'm quiet, the more I'm there. Like I'm not ignoring them. I'm responding. And there's this other way of responding that comes out. This like deep intuitive, this like, you start to realize how much of what you say is just hot air, is fluff. It's filling up the spaces elaborately for the sake of filling up the spaces elaborately. It's like an ego thing. I have to make a joke to feel self-worth here. Or like maybe you're just used to hanging out with people who do that. They compete that way constantly with no aim and call it fun. Whereas, sometimes, sometimes it's fun. Sometimes what we really need is just someone to kind of be there. That's it. And there's just special people out there who that is really enough for them. They are not compelled into deep conversation. They just like having company. And those people usually have huge hearts, because the fact of just being around another human being with all their anxiety of like not being a big talker or whatever it is, it's special enough for them. And you'll see them out. You'll see them at parties. There's one in your friend group, and they're just there. They're just there to the bitter end, and they fucking love everybody in your crew, in your friend crowd. They have amazing times at parties, but they just don't have that much to contribute because they're just actually so satisfied with what's happening around them. Sometimes they're shy. But you give those people room, you give those people space, you find amazing people coming to life. And it is like offering them the biggest gift in the world. Because you see this shy person start to come out of a shell. You see someone not able to go into the patterns and roles that usually you feel like they hide behind. That's another thing. If you have friends that you feel like they're hiding behind roles because you've done a lot of work on yourself and meditation, and you journal and whatnot, and you're trying to break patterns, and you have a if you're doing the work and you find yourself judging people who they hide behind roles, and it's because you've done so much work on yourself, and try to break away from that. And guys, the shadow will always find somewhere to hide. The shadow will always find somewhere to hide. It never disappears. There's always going to be an ego side to everything. So no matter how much work you've done, there's some pattern that you're clinging to. That's fine. The patterns of breaking, the practice of breaking patterns are always temporary, and they grow on you. But there's always another level. There's always another realm of patterns. And I believe they expand as you go up. As you really work on yourself, open yourself up, transcend aspects of your personality, transmute aspects of your personality, keep digging out the shadow, the parts of yourself you don't know, you don't see, or you could reframe to see more fully and see how some people are going to encounter it. And you usually project that onto other people because you're not aware of it in yourself. You don't kind of know it inside out, how it could land on certain other people with different points of view, coming from a different place. I don't have any precise examples right now, I'm afraid. But yeah, as I was saying, I think we expand as we break through layers of pattern conditioning, and then the more we expand, the more we're capable of, the more we find grounding in a new place. And then you're kind of exploring from that part, whatever that is, grounded in heightened spiritual realms, grounded in very Mother Earth, Gaia-based practices, grounded in the system of law, if you're a lawyer, grounded in atomic energy, if you're a physicist, grounded in performativity, if you're a singer, whatever it is. And then you're expanding out from there, exploring out from there, but everything kind of tends to have a relatability because everything is of the nature of the universe. Anyway, this is a long tangent and a long aside. Sorry, guys. I also wash my hair, and it looks crazy right now because it's been raining, so my hair is looking crazy right now. So excuse all the playing, all the self consciousness. A little bit of vulnerability there. Okay. So giving space to people. You see them come out of their shell. You see them get past, especially if they're used to giving you the space because you have so much to say and whatnot. It just makes people happy. It makes people happy. So you could, to consciously practice that, it reframes so much of your own projections, so much of your own judgments. Like me, as someone who knows a lot about a lot, just because of circumstances of things I've been through, not because of questions I've chosen to ask myself and information I've chosen to encounter, but stuff I just needed to ground, to settle, just the way my education has gone, just how fluid my identity is in terms of like where I'm from and what nationality I am, just because guys, I'm born in the Caribbean. I'm born in Antigua. My mom's French Arabic mixed, but we're French naturalized if you look into it. My dad's English but born in the Caribbean. So I just have I'm blessed. I'm lucky to have had just a lot of loopholes in attachments. Like I can't really attach to myself to national identity too much because I don't look like nationals from the country I come from. I don't sound like them, and I don't relate to as much to the countries that I do look like the people, because I grew up in the Caribbean. And so there's just all these little wacky openings in what I could attach to identity wise, and I just come across a lot of times as this know-it-all, and I'm aware of it, and it puts people off. And I used to really victimize myself and say, I'm not accepted anywhere, and I don't have a voice to say that I'm not accepted, and searching for that voice just kind of made me smarter, which just made it worse, because I found that voice in everything that is most human nature wise, which is not attached to identity necessarily, although I have theories, obviously, because this is how I try and keep myself sane and validate myself. I have theories as to why things like prejudice against someone that looks like other has evolved into the human race, into the human species. And like most things, I tried to have explanations that relieve anyone of true responsibility of heinous acts, but not in a sense that relieves their responsibility towards it. One that if we understand what compelled us, our subconscious patterns, our what we've evolved from, what we're evolving to, how consciousness works, how language works in the brain, and then in order to ameliorate our society, we need to get to know ourselves better. And in knowing yourself, you start to understand other human beings. Like you start to understand other human beings better. And in that sense, well, we're all consciousness in a human vessel. We're all kind of one, no matter how different we are. This underlying substratum of who we are is the same. It's the same electricity that runs into the through different circuitry. But getting back, so being that person, learning to show up, and instead perpetuating my victim narrative of, I don't know, being the guy that sets everyone off against him just by virtue of how big he is in a way he didn't ask to be. Just show up and really measure how much of that I care to even put out there. To learn how much I'm actually learning to listen deeply to people around me, because once we feel like our voice is too strangled, at least I feel like when my voice is too strangled, I stop seeing as much, I stop tolerating as much, I get triggered more easily. But if I come with this conscious intention, at least to practice this, to show up at least around people I'm safe around. And you know what? I imagine when you're with people around, unless they have malicious intentions towards you, but people you don't know yet, and you show up and you do is consciously listen and you're curious until moments where conversation dries up, and then you add in something. I'm sure magic happens even then. So I have several reasons why I think this kind of magic happens, and it's especially with the people we know. I would say is that with the people you fall into roles, you fall into patterns, and when you start to defy that role by just coming and bringing presence, then you allow the dynamic between you and the other person to change, and our subconscious patterns are and basically our projections that take us into our subconscious patterns. So guys, we all project, and what we project is that which we don't want to acknowledge in ourselves. So what we do is we understand things not as they're meant, like our brain if our quickest judgment of what we're being told, our brain scans and finds these unresolved, like it scans what someone's telling you to find things that seem like are the injustices that's been said to you, like if your parents that don't listen to you, that always marginalize you, or you grew up with friends who made fun of you. You look for the threat in what's being said first, and you only hear the threat. You only hear the thing that calls you stupid. You only hear, you don't hear the whole context of the phrase. And that is to take you into the pattern of facing that feeling again. But the thing is, if how do you get past that pattern is you find what's wrong, what's stopping you from actually interpreting what's happening for just what it is. And then once you start to be able to acknowledge that in the way that your brain scans information, then you realize it's a part of yourself that you judge because you judged it in others. You're perpetuating your own victim narrative because it kept you safe in some way, or because it allowed your parents who marginalized you to feel loved, and you were taught that that's how you offer love, because these were figures of unconditional love to you. Like if you can't love your parents, and you're not safe as a child, and usually that's where it all starts, is childhood and with our parents. And whatever ways we have to compensate for something that we're not getting, because the parent has a need from the child as a crutch to feel enough themselves. And so we carry those patterns out. And when you come in and you hold space and you deeply listen, all those snags to project that come from another person, they fall flat on their face. Especially if you're doing the poker face, like I said, from the conscious walking stuff. All those attempts fall flat on their face, and a new pattern is forced to emerge. A lot of times you'll notice someone will just agitate violently against the silence and the presence, and the fear will come out in exactly those words. What are you, fucking with me? What is this, some kind of game? What, and then there you see that if that's the response, that person feels unsafe actually being given the space. And that's why these conscious exercises are important. And not only for the person that you're giving the space to and deeply listening to, but also so that you can sit and notice what your tendency, what your pattern is, that you're having to stifle and resist, so that you can actually be listening and be strongly present. And notice actually what's important to say to you, from you. What's important for you to say to this person once you've really given all the space to hear everything they say, and you've had time to hear things and see your initial response that wants to take it over, and then keep it and hear more, and then realize how that changes what your response would have been, and hear more, and usually another person just unravels more the more they share, and then you start to really see what's wanting to be said and what your role is to mold what's wanting to be said into something that is just a pattern between you and this person. And then you can see what you do to stop people from feeling, or to stop yourself from feeling when you're in a conversation with someone else. Because guys, also when you're deeply listening and you're holding space, what you're allowing as well is someone to feel comfortable. And this comes back to Sweat Lodge. Someone to feel comfortable in feeling what they're feeling, because you're there and you're not reacting. So you let those patterns attempts to snag into those patterns fall flat on their face. And you offer space. You offer healing. You offer the space for someone to be vulnerable. You offer the space to find what you truly want to say when this person truly is heard. You find out what you want to say when you're not falling into your own patterns of the first available behavior. Yeah, so I guess I'll stop there, guys. Just, I hope I've given enough information to implore people to try this. To explore their habits in this way. It's a quick and easy way. Try the conscious listening exercise with a friend. Not a really good friend either. Someone, they say the best conversations you're going to have is with a stranger. Someone like that. Someone more neutral. Me and my friend Annalisa, we didn't know each other the best when we started doing this, and that's why it was great. Because we could follow the rules without it being an ode to each other. It was really an exercise we were going through with each other. Like two people that are met at a workshop. But especially if you have a meditation practice, this is a way of pushing that forward. Of taking that into movement. Taking that into interactions with other people. And noticing how the subconscious wants to interact. Notice how it's not always in the content of what's being said, but sometimes in the movement. And notice yourself. Slow down reality. Try it. Try it for a day. Try it for 2 days. Try it for a week. Conscious listening. Maybe you find a lot of joy in it. I know it's been giving me a lot of joy because it's been giving friends of mine space to really speak. And then after doing that for a couple of days of seeing that same friend, I might come back and I might know exactly what I want to say. Exactly what I want to say. When I've had like an eagle's eye bird overview of what I notice they do when they're given the space every time they want to talk. It's interesting, guys. It's deeply supportive, and I highly recommend it. And I hope you liked this video, and it's been useful. This is Healer Holly. If you liked this video, please like it, subscribe. There's lots of other information out there for you to get. Comment about your own experiences with this. Complimentary information. Further discussion. What did I miss? What could I have said better? Drop in some other definitions of projection down there if you want. Let's give it a 3-dimensional shape to the concept. I love you guys. Over and out.